What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Morello Show. This is episode number 9. Got to hold up the fingers, obviously. My name is Kyle Morello. I am your host. And with me today, very special guest, great friend of mine, big hockey fan, Kevin Braeunle. How we doing?
What's up, Kyle? Thanks for having me. It's we got a lot to talk about today. So
we do. We got hockey playoffs coming up about a week or so.
Yeah. I don't
like
think
that.
anything. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Nothing's really set in stone, and COVID pushed it back already. And then you have the whole situation in Canada and how much they were delayed, and it'll probably be within like week. Probably start sometime next week, I'm sure. But
Yeah. It was supposed to start this week.
Yeah, regular season was supposed to end 2 days ago, and then playoffs were supposed to start, I think, tomorrow. But
yeah,
we're still having regular season games here, and a few of them pretty big ones, especially tonight. I don't know if I guess the episode comes out tomorrow, but we got a lot of big games tonight that'll be pretty big going forward. So
yeah, the Canadian division definitely has some struggles in their season with COVID, especially the Canucks. The Canucks was the main reason for it, of course.
Yeah, they really got hit hard, and then they came back actually pretty strong, and they won some games. But I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs or anything anyway. But they really kind of set the division back a little bit in terms of just the postponements and whatnot. But
yeah, that's a shame. But I mean, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there for sure. But Kevin, this is something I've been waiting for like a week or so. I'm gonna have to start off. I know this is the playoff episode. We're gonna get into the playoffs. We're gonna get into who we think is gonna go far, who we think are flops, and all that. But there's been some events in the National Hockey League in the last 6 or 7 days or so. So, and they involve the team here, my New York Rangers.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to talk about this real quick.
Yeah, you can't skip over this. I mean, it's been the talk of the town in regards to the NHL for the last week, and it's a shame because it's really not a good look for the NHL how everything unfolded.
No, not at all. Now, for my viewers who don't know hockey all that well, let me summarize what has happened. So the Rangers played the Capitals last Monday or Tuesday, I think it was.
Yeah, last week.
Was our last game potentially with playoff implications if we lost to the Capitals. We were going to be eliminated, which we did end up losing. But nonetheless, big game. Second period, I think it was, might have been third. I'm forgetting right now. Stoppage, ball goes to the Rangers net. Or did I just say ball?
Oh man,
my goodness!
Not used to hockey so late, huh?
I know. I got baseball in my mind too. Puck goes to the net, stops. Tom Wilson, Capitals forward, pretty good at hockey. Has a history of being, not the nicest.
A little bit of a goon.
Yeah.
A little bit of a goon.
He kind of had a dirty hit on Pavel Buchnevich in that scrum. Not great. Caused a scrum to go out of hand a little bit. Artemi Panarin, one of the best players in the league, the Rangers' best player. He kind of jumps on the back of Wilson to get him off of Buchnevich. And then Wilson kind of turns around. Now, granted, he's 6'4", 220. Turns around, ragdolls him to the ice, starts beating him in the head, caused a big whole thing. And the Department of Player Safety, headed by George Parros, decided that he would only get a $5,000 fine, which is the maximum that they're allowed to, which is a whole nother argument. It's stupid. But wasn't even fined for the Panarin stuff. And the Rangers put out a scathing statement saying that Parros is unfit for his job, which I loved it. I've never seen anything like that with really any team in professional sports.
Yeah, that was super unique. I saw that come out, and that's really interesting. We see a team kind of clap back like that. I mean, you just don't see it usually.
You don't see it
you get some disgruntled people and you move on, but to make a statement like that, that's put it out there on social media and really stand behind it. That's a big step. But
really,
I liked it.
Oh, what were you saying?
I thought it was a good move. I mean, the Rangers are sticking up for their players, and as they should. And obviously it kind of backfired for him a little bit. But I mean, that situation, just the whole thing and how everything unfolded after that, it's we haven't seen something like that in hockey in so long. But
the only professional sports franchise I can even like remember doing that is simply just Mark Cuban, who gets fined
Yeah.
like every year. It seems
Yeah.
like for
Yeah.
which like I don't blame him. He's got money to lose. It's fine. If he
Yeah.
wants to
Oh,
complain
yeah.
about the officials, it's whatever. But here's the real kicker though, Kevin. Right? So in between those games, he only gets fined $5,000. No suspension. It was a dirty, dirty hit. It was like one of the dirtiest I've seen in like a long time. Obviously the statement comes out and people on social media are incensed that he doesn't get suspended. Rangers players are incensed he doesn't get suspended. Keep in mind, we have a game against Capitals. This was last Wednesday. So it was like the next game we played was against Capitals. We had back to back. In between those, maybe even the day of the game, the Rangers fire John Davidson, who's the president, former president now, and Jeff Gordon, who is the general manager, who built our up and coming squad. We have the youngest team in the NHL. We were on the brink of the playoffs for a lot of the season, especially the second half. Granted, inconsistent. I get it. But this is just where it gets like we were texting that day too. Like, why? I know we weren't in play. Like, I know we were out of playoff contention at that point. We had just gotten eliminated. And the statement too, I guess that may have been a part of it. But like James Dolan, stay out of hockey. You always stay out of hockey. You always ruin the Knicks. The Knicks are finally good again. They clinched the playoff spot. But like, stay out of it. Stay out of it. Like, do you agree with me?
I 100% agree with you. And I think, hockey is one of those sports where I don't think people have as much knowledge of it as they do, some of the other big four or the big three sports, just because, there's a lot more to it. And it's not as popular, I guess you could say. So, and Dolan's done this before, and, obviously with the Knicks and all that, but, I don't understand it. I don't think many people do, but it's a big statement. I think it just circles back to where they want to be and what ownership wants, and they want to win now. It just doesn't make sense.
Completely understandable.
But right. But when you say 2-3 years ago or whatever it is, you're going to rebuild. No team really in recent years, except, maybe the Penguins and a few other teams have had such an accelerated rebuild. The Rangers have had so much, stockpiling of talent, first round picks. They're well ahead of schedule. And to make this move, and Jeff Gordon and John Davidson, they've both done amazing jobs. And Jeff Gordon, being the head of this whole rebuild situation, what he's been able to do, winning the lottery with Lafreniere.
Which obviously that was a little bit of luck.
That was luck, right? And even
Kakko
was lucky. They jumped up a ton of spots to get him. But, that's just all part of the acceleration of the rebuild and making some of the trades they did and, bringing in Panarin. And then you got guys like Andre Miller finally coming in and Shesterkin and Georgiev. The young talent's there. And but now it's, forget about that. It's win now mode. And I think that's why you're going to see a really, really big offseason. A lot of changes. I know they want to add grit. They want to get another number one center. They want to do a lot of things. And I think that's why, quite frankly, I think Eichel, he's going to land as a Ranger. They're going to make a push for him. There's no guarantee. The price is going to be high. But, he put out a statement today. He's not happy. And who can be? Buffalo's been so bad for so long. It's a shame. And you see, finally McDavid, you see what he's doing. But Edmonton's starting to have a little bit of a success. And, Eichel's probably always kind of going to compare his career and where he's at with McDavid. And, I don't blame him for wanting out of Buffalo and to go to a place like New York.
Don't get me wrong. He's never going to touch McDavid.
Nobody will.
McDavid is one of the best hockey talents I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, I think too. I think we're ready to hand over the torch. He's the best player in the world right now.
I think he has been. You can even make the argument.
Nobody at his age is dominating their league like McDavid. What he's doing right now. I know you got some great young talents in baseball and football and whatnot, but McDavid's on another world. So
I would say it's him and Mahomes is.
Yeah,
and Trout.
Yeah, they're just dominating. But Trout's getting older, right?
He's in his prime.
He's in his prime, but McDavid's still, 23?
Yeah,
24. Like he's still a young guy, and Mahomes is a young guy too. They're going to dominate for years and years and years. So, but circling back to the Rangers, it screams win now. That's it. That's the only thing I can really think of. So, and it's not like right now, I don't think they're a Stanley Cup playoff team. So what does that mean? If you want to win now, you got to make changes. So big offseason's coming. I wouldn't be surprised if some picks move off the board. Obviously, players' prospects is all, it's all going to determine, their future. But what the Rangers are looking to do. I mean, obviously, Eichel's probably number one target for them, but
Gotta be.
it's going to be a steep price. You're not going to be able to walk in and get Eichel for a bag of pucks. I mean, you're going to have to pay a ton of, draft capital, prospects, combination of the two. But I mean, if you're in win now mode, that's the move you got to do. So.
I agreed. And I think, Chris Drury is going to be taking over the president and GM duties. And I think he is going to do a great job, former Ranger. But, we will see what happens. We are getting to that point where it's, like you said, we are going to start to win now. But speaking of teams winning now, we've got playoffs coming up, like we did mention. So we're going to get into that right now. Kevin, if there was one team out there, because there's a lot of teams at the top of each division that are all fairly good teams. What's the one team, if you were in the Stanley Cup playoffs, that you would be most afraid to face throughout the playoffs?
I mean, before the season started, Vegas was my team this year. I've rode that wave since I made that claim, and I've stuck with it all year. I just think it's their year. It's a little interesting now. The divisional matchups are different. The quote unquote conference finals will be different. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, and nothing's really set in stone in terms of seeding, except for a few matchups we know. But I mean, I really like Vegas, but there's so many teams. I mean, Colorado, Tampa, again, they could be a team, right? But you don't know.
You never
Stamkos is coming back and Kucherov's coming back, but you don't know what kind of level they're going to be at right away. And they got a really tough first round matchup too. So, if they're not firing on all cylinders right away, I don't think it's as easy for them as people think. But I got to stick with Vegas. They're too deep. I mean, they've probably the best goaltending tandem in the NHL right now, or definitely easily top three. The Pietrangelo move was, that's just another win now move. You're buying into everything that they're doing. And, he's obviously got the Stanley Cup pedigree. He can play great defensively, offensively, leadership, all of that. And then, they roll four lines. Stone, one of the best two-way players in the game. Pacioretty, he's a great goal scorer. He's having a career year. And
another underrated move. I know that wasn't this year, but still another underrated move that they made last year.
Yeah, for sure. I was never the biggest Pacioretty fan, but he's really found a fit in Vegas and playing with Stone and on that power play. I mean, that really turned out to be a solid move, and especially if they end up winning the whole thing this year. And then furthermore, guys like Ryan Reeves, they're not going to talk about him much, but you need that kind of grit in the Cup final, especially, you see what the Rangers, that whole situation. If Ryan Reeves was on the Rangers, there's no way Tom Wilson even thinks about doing that.
Oh, they're squaring up if that happens.
Yeah. Wilson's getting jumped and it's probably getting his ass kicked.
Yeah.
And not every team is fortunate enough to have a guy like Ryan Reeves, or, you could even say Wilson or some of the other, bigger, enforcer type guys that, I think you really need just to keep things in line and make sure, nobody on the other team's doing any funny business. So, but I got to stick with Vegas. Maybe a little bit of a bias there.
Well, you're sticking with your pick. That's
Yep. So, but there's a lot of teams. And with COVID and the season and how everything's going, it's such a wild card. And the NHL playoffs are already, so unpredictable as is. So,
arguably the most exciting playoff tournament that we have.
I'm going to say it is.
Of course.
And NCAA basketball, I think, gives it a run for its money. I got to be honest, but I'm too big a hockey fan to say otherwise. So
I know. It's 1 and 2 for me with those two, but
sure.
They're close. Now, is there, on the flip side of that, any team that's kind of skating on the wild card line, or like the bottom few teams in the playoffs, that you think could make a surprise run to maybe the conference finals or even the finals?
I think the teams at the top are too good and too deep to really, give anybody too much trouble. You look at some of the potential matchups. I think the only place you might see it is in the East Division. The Islanders are currently the 4th seed, could be the Bruins as well. And those two teams are always good to give you some trouble. I mean, the Bruins have been playoff staples for so long, and the Islanders
arguably one of the best lines in hockey.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'd say, last year definitely was, and the year before that, obviously, too, was great. But, this year as well, I mean, Bergeron has just been so great, two-way guy, and Pastrnak just scores it at will, and Marchand does a little bit of everything. So, and, you got the Islanders, too, right now sitting at that 4th seed. They were, top of the division at one point in the year, and look what they did last year. They made it all the way to the conference finals in the East. So, I think that's the only, scenario I see maybe having a little bit of an upset. I think, especially with Pittsburgh at top. I'm not really buying into the Pittsburgh. Maybe it's just because I don't really like them. But, I think a lot of, there's a lot of things that go into it. The Islanders haven't been playing well recently. The Penguins have. But the Islanders, I just announced today, they're getting more fans in the building. And that changes a lot, especially with not having fans for over a year. You keep getting more energy in the building, and that's going to go a long way, especially now. So, I think the Islanders or the Bruins are probably the only two I see upsets. Otherwise, everyone else is too strong at the top. So
I hate to admit this because I hate the Islanders as a Rangers fan, but like they could go to the conference finals again. Like I've watched them play against the Rangers. Like, yes, they are inconsistent as we were, but they're just a better team. But like they can either lose to one of the worst teams in the league, like 4-2 or something like that, or they can beat the Penguins like 5-1. Like they can flip if they flip that switch. Like I think they could go
their
far.
game, if they're on their game and their defensive structure, Barry Trotz, that whole, that's so hard to play against if that's in form and they're playing that to a T. They can beat anybody. It's just how well they're playing. Are they playing into their system? Which is going to determine where they end up. So they're kind of a bit of a wild card in terms of they can make a deep run or they could get first rounded. So they're hard to judge, but they got the talent, they got the system, and they got the coaching. So.
Oh, absolutely. Barry, obviously he won the cup with Washington.
Sure.
Came over to the Islanders the next year. They went to the conference finals last year. They beat the top seeded Flyers, your guys. And they did put up a good fight in the conference finals, but ultimately fell short to the Lightning. I don't think anyone was going to beat the Lightning. So, it's tough. And that's the other thing with the Lightning we were talking about earlier. Like, they just need to stay healthy. Stamkos hasn't been healthy in years. Kucherov obviously had his issues this year with health. Is that a team you think could repeat? I know they're not at the very top of the teams this year. They're not in like those top 3 or 4, but like, do you think they could repeat?
Of course. You just look at the roster. It's like, how can they? They're the 3 seed in the Central, which is kind of lower than a lot of people expected. But you got to take into account, like you said, all those injuries. Yeah. They're getting one of the best players in the world back for playoffs, right? It's just a matter of his form and where he's at in terms of his playing ability. That's going to determine a lot. But, they're so deep. They got the best goaltender in the world right now. I don't think many people are going to argue that. And they roll 4 lines. They got great defense. I think the Savard
Hedman's one of the
trade,
best defenders in the league too.
Yeah. Arguably the best, right? He's up there for the Norris again. Like I said, I think the Savard trade was an amazing trade. That's a guy that just eats minutes. He eats pucks, PK guy, solid stay at home. So they just keep getting deeper. It's just a matter of health. And I think that the toughest thing for Tampa is they got a tough schedule to get through the finals. They got Florida in the first round. We know that. Florida's been great this year. And then you probably get Carolina. And Carolina's
great this year too.
Best team in the division in the league right now.
Yeah, they're tied with the Golden Knights.
Sneakily, they are a fantastic team that nobody really talks about much. So to go through 2 solid teams like that, I know they've been doing it all year in the Central, so you see these teams a lot, but that's going to be really tough for them. And then depending on how the rest of the playoffs shakes out, the conference final matchups are always going to be hard, but it's not like this year is a little bit different. You're not going to see that East-West, kind of division or East-West conference final matchups that we're used to seeing. It's going to go back to a 1-4-2-3 seeding. So they could end up getting Vegas or Washington or Toronto, once they get there, if they get there. So, but they're definitely, I mean, they can repeat for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned, like with the Savard trade, like those things get overlooked sometimes because he's not like a star. He's not on Kucherov, Stamkos, like all those guys levels. But those are the kind of guys that can win you cups. Those are the kind of guys, like you
100%.
said, like on the PK, like grit and grind kind of players. Can also provide you some offense though, experienced. Like that's something like those. That's a guy that can win you a cup, and I think that goes overlooked like a lot in
Yeah,
hockey.
especially when it comes to playoffs. You need the grit, you need the shot blockers, you need the guys that are going to get in the corners, do the dirty work, get to the net. You see it with a lot of teams. I mean, you got the star talent, and that's great, and that's one thing, and you need that too. But if you don't have the guys that are willing to, do the dirty work and that kind of thing, it's tough to get there. So, and especially in playoffs, everybody's lying there, leaving their bodies out on the line and doing whatever they can to win. So everybody needs to buy in, or else you're just not going to win. That's the way playoff hockey works.
It's a grind. You got to win 16 games to get a
Yeah,
cup.
it's the hardest thing to do.
It is. It is.
It
Now
really
there's
is.
another team I want to talk about too before we start getting going here. Arguably, if not the most high-powered offense in the National Hockey League, and that would be the Toronto Maple Leafs. Long-standing cup drought, as we know. No success in the playoffs whatsoever the last few decades. Is this the year they start to get it going in the postseason?
They get it going, and I'm pretty certain they make it to the conference finals or the semifinals, whatever you want to call it. But that's primarily due to one thing, and it's the division. It's not great.
No.
I mean, they're going to see Montreal, who started off the year really hot, and now they're hot and cold. They can do really well. They can do really bad. Goaltending, Price wasn't, he's not the Price that he was. They're kind of struggling. They're a decent team, but they're not going to be a challenge. Toronto's just eating that division alive. Matthews, Marner, I mean, those guys are scoring like ridiculous pace. I mean, 40 and 49 for Matthews is unreal.
It's crazy.
One of the best goal scoring campaigns we've seen in years.
This is an MVP season if there's no McDavid.
100%. Oh, 100%. And he's right up there with the Ovechkin eras of his in his 50 goal scoring campaigns and all that. So, but they're going to have such an easy route, I think. I mean, you get Montreal, I think that's a sweep. And then you probably get Edmonton or Winnipeg. I think you get Edmonton just because McDavid's going to take over the series as well as Draisaitl. Goaltending will be a big factor in that series, but it doesn't matter who they get. They're going to beat that team pretty handily, whichever one, Edmonton or Winnipeg. So at that point, I mean, you're there. You're already in the semifinals. So you're the last four, and that's where it gets tough. I don't think they have the depth to compete with a lot of the teams that'll probably be there at that point.
I was going to say, like, if they match up with a Colorado or with a Vegas or a Carolina, like, I don't like you like saying with the depth, like they're very high powered offense. They're very top heavy. But like, is there questions about defense? Is there questions about goaltending when it comes to those elite teams?
100%. I mean, nothing's changed really since last year. What did they do defensively as an upgrade and in between the crease and between the pipes? Nothing. I mean, it's still the same guys, and it's not that they're bad. They're just not going to win you the cups. Defense was always a problem last year and even the previous few years. And they didn't go out and get a big guy. Like if they got a guy like Pietrangelo, it's a different conversation, but they didn't really make any moves. They keep bringing in these offensive weapons, which is why they score like they do. But, that's only going to take you so far. And with the North Division, I mean, you could score like crazy with the teams there and the defense in that league. But once you get to playing a team like Vegas or Tampa, Colorado, I mean, the defense, the Canes have one of the best defenses, D-cores in the league. I mean, you get there and it's going to get a lot harder to score. And that's going to be a big change too, I think. You're so used to, I mean, you didn't see any of these other teams outside of your divisional teams this year, the same old teams you've been playing 8 times a year. So you go, or 9 if you're in the North, but so you go and all of a sudden you get a new team. You got to do a whole different pre-scouting routine. You got to look at the matchups, who they have in goal, their defense, and it's a complete change. And I just don't think Toronto has the depth, especially defensively. I mean, they could score with the best of them, but when it comes to shutting down guys like McKinnon and the waves that will come with the rest of the four lines with Colorado, I mean, it's just you don't really see that kind of depth anywhere else in the North. I mean, you have McDavid, but nobody's stopping McDavid. No. But McDavid alone and Draisaitl, I mean, we've seen the past few years, they only can do so much.
Right.
So, I think Toronto, they do see some playoff success finally. First, second round should be pretty easy for them. But after that, it's going to get a lot more tougher.
The other thing is, do you think, well, one, their offensive players are going to have to play more two-way than they've played all year because they're going to actually see some real talent like that.
Yeah.
Number two, do you think they can keep up with physicality of teams like the Hurricanes or the Golden Knights?
It's tough. I mean, you get a team like Washington who just bully you.
Them too. Yes.
You look at a team like Tampa, not as much. I mean, Vegas is kind of big. I think they'll play a somewhat physical game. Colorado, the least out of and the Canes probably the least out of the teams that'll probably end up.
Yeah.
The top four, but that's definitely a valid question. And the answer is probably no, right? I mean, they're a team that's just built on talent for the most part. They don't have any super big guys, any scary guys. I mean, Simmons going down, that was a big loss for them. Yeah. That was a great addition, I think, bringing a guy with his pedigree, good leadership.
And will step in to go toe-to-toe with anybody who messes with Marner.
Yep. He'll stand up for his teammates. I mean, he's just one of those guys you love to have on your team. When you play a team like Washington, Wilson's not doing anything stupid if Simmons is on the ice. So, but yeah, I think that's going to be another tough factor. And the North Division again too. It's not really a physical division. I mean, nothing really scares you about physicality or any big time physical players there. So that's another question. That's why I think once they get to that semifinal, that top four, even if they do, it's going to be a really, really tough route for them at that point. But they have the ease of schedule going for them. I mean, they'll be the least tested, but also probably the least worn out team at that point, which gives them a chance, right? Because you look at Vegas or Tampa or any of those East teams, they got to go through a pretty big gauntlet. I mean, Vegas is going to have to go through Colorado and St. Louis. St. Louis is going to wear them down. And then you get a team like Colorado, maybe even the Wild sneak through. Two good teams. Tampa's got to go through Florida and then probably Carolina, and then if you're an East team, you're going to have to play the Islanders or the Penguins or the Bruins or the Caps. I mean, that's
the best division in hockey.
I mean, there's no question. I mean, that's going to be difficult. So you get out of there, you're going to be pretty gassed, physically and mentally. So that's the one thing they have going for them is that easy route to the Final Four.
That is true. But on the flip side of that, though, personally, this might be a little bit of a hot take. Maybe not. I think one of the representatives in the Stanley Cup Finals will be from the Eastern Division. I think because of the gauntlet that they have to go through, they're going to be battle tested. Plus, all four of those teams that are making the playoffs have all been in the playoffs a lot the last few years.
I agree. And you see what most of those teams have done at the deadline. So many win now moves. I mean, the Penguins didn't do as much, but the Bruins bringing in Taylor Hall, that's a big get. The Islanders bringing in some veteran leadership guys who fit right into the system. That's just a great move, solid move for them. And then the Mantha trade. I mean, was it an overpayment? I think so. But Mantha's good, and he's big, and he can shoot, and he adds a different dimension to an already big Capitals team that can shoot the puck. They can move the puck. So, and like you said, they're going to be battle tested, whichever team comes out of that division. So, it's going to be a little bit of a grind, but they should be, whichever team comes out should be in pretty good form. I think I probably have Washington coming out of that division and probably the team most likely to reach the final. Just because,
I was actually just going to say, I was going to ask you for your Stanley Cup Finals prediction, but mine, I think Washington comes out of the East and goes to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I think they will play the Vegas Golden Knights. I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way, but just to transition. I think it'll be Vegas versus Washington in the finals again. This time Vegas will prevail, though. What do you think?
Yeah. I think so too. I either have Vegas, Washington, or Vegas, Tampa. Everything is really going to depend on how the seeding goes and that the Final Four and who gets what. Because you could have an East team playing a West team or an East team playing an East team. We could see an all West or an all East final. It's all going to depend on, the divisional or the alignment of the seeding at the end of the day. But I think whoever gets Toronto is going to have the best chance to get to the conference final, just because I think Toronto's not going to be quite up there yet with those big guys. But with how many points Toronto has, they look like they'll probably be the 2 or 3 seed. So it looks like Vegas, if they get there, they'll probably avoid them just because Vegas or Carolina, if either of those 2 teams get there, because they have the most points, so they'll be the 1 seed. But that's huge too, for home ice. But I think Washington is they're big. And, guys like Wilson, Mantha, Obi, Oshie, they wear you down. The only question I have,
time.
Yeah. Yep. And they could score. The only question I have with them is goaltending. Samsonov's kind of been inconsistent, and is he really the guy? And if he's good and going, I mean, they could do it. I think that's the only question mark there. And then, for Tampa, I mean, obvious reasons, goaltending is going to carry them there, of course. If you get Kucherov back, and he's Kucherov of last year, and it's the Kucherov we know, that's scary alone. And then Stamkos, I mean, if he gets back to healthy, I mean, he was having a great year until he got injured again. So if he could stay healthy and produce, I mean, that's just, Tampa's, of course, they're always going to be scary. So, but Vegas for me is definitely there. And I mean, they're my guys. I think they, you look what, some of these teams have done in the past. I mean, bringing in guys like the Braeunle move is just huge. That's a big win now move. And usually you respond after a move like that. And, with Tampa, I mean, last year, it was about time they got the monkey off the back. They were so favored for so long. And I think that Columbus, I mean, Tampa was my pick last year because you bounce back from stuff like, losing to Columbus, a sweep, the guys tend to respond. And I think Vegas has that same kind of chip on their shoulder. They've been there, but haven't been able to get it done. When are they going to get it done? They're making the moves to really make that push. And, last year losing to Dallas, I mean, I thought, Vegas was going to get there, but
I did too.
That the Dallas upset was shocking to a lot of people, I think. So I think they're ready, and the goaltending is Fleury's having an amazing year. And
if it's going to be a year, it's going to be this year.
I really like Vegas, but it's just, there's so much unknown, I mean, we don't even know the first round matchups. We won't know the second round. We don't even know how the semifinal, Final Four matchups are going to shake out. And that has a lot to do with, who gets what. And, as fans get in the building too, that's a big, upgrade for a lot of teams. I mean, just
Absolutely.
that energy in the building, can go really far. So, but I gotta stick with Vegas.
There's going to be a lot to it, but I'm excited. Stanley Cup playoffs are back almost. One of the best times of the year.
It's going to feel more normal than it did last year. I mean, the bubble and everything that worked out great, and it was still great to see playoff hockey, especially in like August. I mean, that's just, it's kind of weird, but it was nice to get hockey then, late in the summer. But now it's starting to get that playoff feel. May gets warmer, at least here, for the East Coast.
Yeah.
And you start to get that feeling in the air, and then teams will finally be playing in their old buildings. Fans are starting to come back in the stadiums, and just got that playoff feel a little bit more than we see.
It may not feel like every year's past, but it will definitely, like you said, feel a lot more different than last year. It'll feel more normal, and I'm excited for that. We're gonna have fans back in stadiums. They're gonna have at least as real as we can get for right now, Stanley Cup playoff environment. So I'm excited about that. Kevin Braeunle, thank you so much for coming on. Love playoff hockey talk. There's nothing better. So
same here. Yep. Of course. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, of course. Next week we're gonna have Shaun Snow. He's a Knicks Twitter guy. Writes for Knicks Film School. That's what it is. Obviously I'm a Knicks fan. We're going to be in the playoffs this year. It's great. It's going to be awesome. But we're going to be previewing that because playoffs start uh about the same time, probably Stanley Cup playoffs will. So, I'm excited about that. And excited to have him on next week for the 10th episode. We're reaching double digits here. Big stuff on the Morello show. But yeah, that's all I got. Kevin, again, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you guys as always. The love and support that I get does not go unnoticed, like I say every time. But it is true. It is true. Trying to think if I have anything else. I don't have anything else. Let's go Rangers, even though we're done already. It's fine. But yeah, it's gonna be awesome Stanley Cup playoffs, and I'm excited. So that's all from me. And we will see you guys this time next week.